Yeah, definitely talk to Justin about some of the exciting things they're doing to bring blockchain technology to very practical use, especially at the government and enterprise level. We're going to now visit Africa, at least for discussion. You've heard mention of Africa several times throughout this convention and the potential for deployment of blockchain technology there. We are going to have a panel to discuss exactly that, which will be moderated by the Middle East lead for the BSV Blockchain for Government Initiative, Ahmed Yusuf, who's from Sudan, raised in the United States, as he'll tell you, and moved back to, is living in Saudi Arabia now in Makkah, but has a near and dear passion for bringing blockchain to the African continent. He'll be joined by panelists Kashifu Inouye Abdullahi, who you saw the other day. He's the Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDTA, in Nigeria, and we are so honored to have his presence again. Jibril Aku is the Group Vice Chairman of FMDQ and the Chairman of Dominion Blockchain Solutions. Dr. Catherine Lephoto is the Executive Sales Director for Africa for VX Technologies. And finally, Reginald Tumasime, who is the founder and CEO of Capital Savvy. Please welcome to the stage our panel about Africa.
Good afternoon. It's time for Africa.
Thank you.
Let's hear about what blockchain can do for Africa and what these leaders, their vision, their ideas about how they can transform the countries and the continent with the most resources. That there's no doubt when people look into Africa, they look from the perspective of a continent that need help. Just let's be honest. But in reality, for those who understand and they lived in this continent, they know there's more resources than probably anywhere else on the earth. Yeah. How to harvest, how to use these resources to benefit the people who live there and to advance the services in the technology side is, I guess, this is what we'll be talking about and discussed. And on top of this journey will be the blockchain enabling all of these resources and all of these ideas and innovations. So before we start and dig deep into this conversation, let's just start by you, Mr. Director General, Mr. Abdullahi from Nigeria. Tell us about yourself real quick, and then we'll get into our conversation, and then everybody will give us just a little bit introduction about themselves.
Okay, thank you very much, Hamad, and thank you for having me. My name is Kashifu Inouye Abdullahi, the Director General and CEO of the National Information Technology Development Agency, a government agency that exists to help Nigerians and anybody residing in Nigeria to create and capture value from emerging technologies such as blockchain, while avoiding the ills of those technology. So our major mandate is to help balance between the challenges and opportunities in emerging technologies by creating an enabling environment for everyone to innovate in Nigeria. Thank you.
So Mr. Jibril Ako.
Yes, thank you very much, Ahmad. I'm a capital market operator, the vice chairman of FMDQ, that's the largest securities exchange, and I'm also an operator in the same capital markets with the Marathon Group, which is advisory and interdealer brokers, and also the chairman of Dominion. I'm an investor and the chairman of Dominion. Now, we're excited about technology in Africa. You talked about the resources of Africa, which is the young people. They are very energetic. They're looking for technology to drive innovation, to drive change. And BSV, bringing that technology will help Africa grow. And that's what we're excited about, and we want to see how we can bring that into Africa. We're used to the traditional methods, the old methods of technology doing business. We're excited by the new one, and we want to see how we go about that.
We're excited to hear about that.
Yes.
So, Dr. Catherine.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Catherine Lephoto. I'm a molecular biologist, actually, so I'm not even a techie. But I am in this space of blockchain, BSV, blockchain technology for the African continent. My background is a molecular biologist. I started my academic career in academia. From there, I moved into the brewing industry. So I actually spent 15 years of my life doing B2B sales in the food and beverage space on the African continent, which is my home, my passion, my dream, my future for my generation and those that come after me. So for me at VX Technologies, currently what we're doing out of South Africa, I'm based in Johannesburg, is to look at how we can transform the health and education sectors of African countries using this amazing transformative technology. And the reason I got into it is that because of COVID, I ended up finding myself running the COVID response program of one of the small kingdoms in Southern Africa, the Kingdom of Lesotho, which is where I originally come from. And it was on that basis where I was able to get a really good insight into how health systems on African continents are challenged. And the big issue there is lack of resources. So what are we going to do to address this? We need to embrace technology. We need to lead African countries and the authority figures on those continents to appreciate and adopt these new technologies that can leapfrog the existing technologies that are currently, in many cases, simply unaffordable and cannot transform, and achieve the goals that we are looking for.
Right. So, Reginald, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Reginald Tumisime. I'm based in Kampala. I'm an ex-banker, founder and CEO of Capital Savvy, which is a technology-centric finance firm. And our focus is actually East Africa. And so what we do under Capital Savvy is we support SMEs with access to credit. We've recently partnered with a Swiss-based firm, Monetics, that is part of the BSV blockchain ecosystem, to provide a gateway for affordable finance from the Western Hemisphere to East Africa. In addition to that, we are one of the founding members of the Blockchain Association of Uganda, and I heard you say we should do a conference of this nature in Africa, and incidentally, we did one in 2018 in Uganda. And so we look forward to engaging and happy to be here.
Perfect. And I know Uganda is doing a lot with Akon and other people are trying to use blockchain, which is, that's to bring the idea of there's a lot of challenges in the which blockchain people can use and which the right blockchain for Africa. And that's what we will discuss. But back to you, Mr. Director General. It's a very sensitive topic, is the financial inclusion. And the solution for Africa they could be no better than blockchain to solve this problem, because we know the percentage is very low for the people who have bank accounts and people who use financial services. And we have ex-bankers here and people who are still in bank. So, Mr. Director General, let's start by the digital literacy in Nigeria and the vision for Africa. What is the percentage and how are you guys working into bringing more education into Nigeria in the digital world?
Digital literacy is very important when it comes to embracing technology, because people need to know the technology for them to embrace it and use it. So in Nigeria, it's very difficult to establish the baseline data now, but we are working with a research company trying to know exactly where we are. But in terms of literacy in general, Nigeria, we have 62% coverage of literacy in general. And we have over 100 million internet users. But the question is, what of the usage level? Are they using the internet for financial activities, for economic activities to create and capture value? That also is a very difficult question to answer. But the government is trying to create the enabling environment. That's why in 2019, the president redesignated our ministry and expanded its mandate to cover digital economy. Before, it was called Ministry of Communications, but now Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. The reason being, communication is just a means to an end. That's the technology itself. But what is the end? The end is how can you use technology to create wealth and prosperity for the nation. So doing that, the ministry formulated the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy. And we have an ambitious target to achieve 95% digital literacy by 2030. So at NIDA, we are implementing that strategy. Part of the thing we are doing is to know the baseline where we are. We already have our to-be where we want to be by 2030, achieving 95% digital literacy level. We have started implementing initiatives that will help us achieve that in terms of deploying infrastructure, learning infrastructure in underserved and unserved communities, in terms of building centers, innovation and incubation centers in big cities so that we can have Nigerians developing products for Nigerians to consume. Part of the conversation we are having with the BSV blockchain is to have the BSV Blockchain Academy in Nigeria. How can we train Nigerians developers to develop blockchain products in Nigeria? Like we have a target this year, within a year, to train 1 million developers in Nigeria.
Wow.
So we want a lot of them to be trained in emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and robotics. We have already impacted more than 1.5 million Nigerians in terms of digital literacy within a year from the time we started implementing the policy to date. And we are partnering with organizations, civil society organizations, and so on, to reach more, to reach a wider coverage within the shortest possible time.
Interesting.
So we are hoping before 2020 we will achieve the 95% coverage or rate.
Very ambitious.
2030, and that's a very ambitious goal, and we know always goals like this will lead to success if you have the right sparks, and that spark is the education. When you educate people and you have boots in the ground, that you can take the country to the next level. So that will take us to our Mr. Ako, being in the financial industry and now in the blockchain solutions, merging that together. What is the fintech solutions that could actually bring the answers that the Africans are looking for from the financial inclusion perspective and from the payments and other fintech solutions?
All right, thank you. In terms of how we'll cover more people and bring down the cost, cost has always been a factor in Africa. We've struggled with how to deepen financial products into the rural space. And when you look at the number of people with bank accounts, it's still not the full coverage the way we have the number of people that use telephones. Yeah. Recently, some of the two large telcos have decided that they want to be a bank to see how they can switch some of those customers from telephone customers to bank customers. But we still will have a problem with the cost. What's the cost of delivering those services? And that's where Bitcoin, BSV blockchain will come in. in the sense that if I was having a discussion with Craig and he says, how would you lower the cost, which is about 40% of what you used to deliver that service to the underserved, to the rural area? What can deliver it at a fraction of the cost is using a technology like blockchain. And that's the excitement, because we have a young population in Africa. They're vibrant. Look at the way we embrace the telephone technology. If we can push that technology into the banking space, that will help. In Nigeria, and indeed many African countries, the regulator plays a key role. The regulator gives you the license to operate. The regulator licenses the technology that you use to operate. In fact, approves the technology. Correct. So BSV will do a lot more if it does the awareness, come into the country and begin to put before the regulators this technology that's available. Our friend here, the Director General, will play a key role in that, in the sense that since in charge of the infotech area, he can then convince the financial regulators that it's a safe technology, and given the developers is looking for, we can begin to create products that can go deep down to the small rural players, the man who barbs your hair, and he can collect payment from it. That's the kind of minute level we expect this technology to deliver. Right. And BSV will have a key role to play in that awareness campaign.
Very, very insightful. So now to Dr. Catherine. Talking about the technology and the journey of the technology in general, you are coming not from the fintech side, but adopting the technology in general. What is your vision for that? How can we attract people from outside the continent and encourage people inside the continent to start investing in the blockchain and building solutions in the blockchain?
Right, so I think it starts from recognizing that, we always hear about the African continent as presenting a very good investment opportunity for the future, right? And why is that? It's purely because that continent is fraught with problems. And as entrepreneurs, we know that if, you see a problem and you bring a solution to it, that's how you make money, right? So in the African, in the African context, at least for us in VX Technologies, and for me specifically coming from a scientific background and a policy-making background with my recent experience with COVID management, it is really about trying to understand how to bring together products and solutions that address real social ills of that continent, right? So when you look at this technology that's blockchain that everybody is talking about nowadays, for me what it says is simply to say data is currency.
Yes.
Right? But whose currency is it? Whose data is it anyway? We have a continent of 1.3 billion people. At VX Technologies, our solutions are about putting that data, the sovereignty of that data, into the hands of the owner, such that the owner can use it to empower their lives. So when you look at the health space specifically, we're living at a time where we are dealing with pandemics of viral natures. I come from South Africa. Maybe some of you are not even aware. We are currently, as a country, in the 5th wave of the COVID pandemic. And as a result of this specific pandemic, we are faced with an issue where, for the first time in living memory, we find ourselves in a situation where people outside of the health sector are now expected to access my health information. That's problematic. Just in its own accord, that's problematic. And that's the message we're trying to address on the African continent, not only with authorities, but also with the owners of the data, for them to understand that you need to be assured of your rights to your personal information.
Yes.
Right? So if in South Africa, there is a vaccination mandate that says, you cannot access X, Y, and Z places or venues unless you can present your vaccination record. But how fair is that to the owner of that record? Because all of a sudden, I'm having to present my private health information to a non-health practitioner.
Yeah.
That's where the solutions that we are building on the BSV blockchain technology are starting to address the privacy concerns, but also the issue of whose data is it?
Yes, the data ownership is always a topic that every entity is trying to solve, but there is no a perfect answer anywhere.
Absolutely.
Which it's very important. But I'm going to ask you a question here regarding, of course, we all lived the past few years with the COVID challenge, traveling and getting out of your house. In some countries, you have to have certain aspects of your proof of vaccination and proof. So if there is a way for sharing data across border, I know that you guys are working in this solution, but there's a lot of regulations, which is another topic we're going to discuss. How much data sharing and less regulation across the border happening specifically in Africa, considering the challenge with, like, I don't want to share the data of my citizens with you. Is there's anything happening in this regard?
Right. So currently what's happening, I mean, speaking of South Africa is an example, is a real example in Southern Africa where the bulk of the traffic going into that country every day across its land and air borders, right? Currently, you are expected to present your proof of vaccination, right? And the classical systems that some of the countries surrounding South Africa are presenting to address the issue personally worry me, because they are now allowing private companies to access the health database of the government. That is a problem. It cannot be right, because we know what happens with private entities. They are literally data scrapping. I cannot feel comfortable sitting here knowing that I am registered on a government database, that a private entity comes in and gets a full view of my health history. That is incorrect. That is not right, and that should not be happening on the African continent. It will not happen in the West. So why is it happening on the African continent? It goes back to what my colleague was saying earlier about the need to empower African citizens with information. We need to teach our people about this technology. What are the do's and the don'ts? What are the risks and what are the opportunities? Hence the BSV Blockchain Academy, which I'm hoping will come to Johannesburg.
So, Reginald, speaking from investment perspective, every problem, every challenge is actually opportunities. And just as I mentioned in the beginning, that we are the continent with the most resources, but yet we are the continent with the most problems. How can we view these problems as opportunities and attractive for investors to come and open doors for investment in technology using BSV blockchain?
Very interesting question. So I'll just give you an example. In Africa, according to the Africa Development Bank, we have a funding gap, a credit gap of $100 billion for SMEs. And funny thing is, 80% of that is on the sub-Saharan, which is where firms like us play. So imagine that, right? And so that's an opportunity, and that led us to get into a partnership with Monetics to address that gap, right? And we've seen tremendous growth over the last 24 months. Let's talk about agriculture, for instance. As you know, from where I come from, in Uganda, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. And one of the initiatives that the government continuously focuses on is how do farmers get access to agro-input commodities in partnership with different development partners. And in our work, we've suggested a solution to the agriculture sector using NFTs, right? Interesting, because NFTs are known to be, digital speculative tools.
Is it NFT in BSV blockchain? Or?
Yes, and that's the solution we've proposed to sort of track how commodities move from a dealer to the farmer through the extension workers that are all over the country. So those are interesting use cases to address some of these key challenges. Let's talk about payments, right? It costs an average of 8 to 10% to send money across countries within the region or outside Africa, within Africa. Companies like Centby, which I recently interacted with, part of the BSV ecosystem as well, are solving for that. So how do we then continuously view these challenges as opportunities? So I believe that, being a very young population, you have, 60% of the African population under the age of 25. We're seeing tremendous adoption and uptake of such technologies to solve our problems.
Perfect.
And looking forward to being part of the solution.
Yeah, this is amazing and very opening, very eye-opening for a lot of people who wants to invest in the continent. Back to you, Mr. Director General. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to give you guys all 1 minute. This part of the conversation is passionate topic to me, the bureaucracy. As Mr. Ako just mentioned, that Africa is the most regulated continent or place on earth because there's a lot of regulation. And those regulations are actually opening a lot of doors for corruptions and a lot of doors. I don't want to take this into, I want to make answer and bring solution into this regard. So bureaucracy is a way that when you go to get a certain business done with government, that you have to provide a lot of information, a lot of papers, a lot of documentation, a lot of data. What is the perspective in using blockchain to solve this? Because there's easy access to data sharing and information gathering and passing this information, especially with BSV blockchain, has the lowest transactional fees and efficiency and the biggest block on the blockchain. How can we use that to answer the question of bureaucracy?
Yeah, I think government is bureaucratic to make sure due diligence is followed, but humans exploit that to corrupt the process. The essence of bureaucracy mainly is to make sure there is due diligence. You get what you are supposed to get, and you have correct documentation in place. So blockchain, being the trust network for value, can help address that because it will disintermediate, remove the middleman. People will trust the system. Why do we need government to do things? Or why do we need middle entity like a bank to transact? Because we don't trust the other party. But if you can have a system in place that will make sure there is trust, there is transparency, there is traceability of whatever happened, people will trust that system. And what system can achieve that? The answer is blockchain.
Blockchain. Trust is the main feature in the blockchain.
Yes.
And everybody can see the information.
Yeah. And people or governments in general were skeptical about the main blockchain or Bitcoin because they don't know who are behind it.
Or
But having,
to separate.
yes, a private blockchain like BSV will build confidence and trust in governments to embrace the technology because you know who are behind the system, and it can help you with KYC. That's one major area government is trying to address because people are using Bitcoin for money laundering and other things.
Yes.
And government has responsibility to protect citizens and ensure there is a sense of security in whatever we transact.
Right. So yes, BSV is a public blockchain, but there is a way that the data and the information could be protected inside a geographical location, like a country. We can hash it and use different methods of that. So yes. So over to you. We're really running out of time, but just in 1 minute, if we can see how we can get the bureaucracy out of the door. Just use blockchain and solve it. What is your insight on that?
No, you've touched on the major drawback in doing business in Africa. Whether it's clearing goods at the ports, whether it's obtaining government services, whether it's in the healthcare, in business, there are several bottlenecks that makes the cost of the business very expensive for people.
Yeah.
So any technology that can lower that cost and introduce efficiency will go a long way in bringing investors into Africa. And that is the challenge that we have to solve. Our company, Dominion, is working with some African countries on port clearing, for example. We could tell you how much, using technology, we've reduced the timeline it takes to clear goods. So there are several bottlenecks across several African countries, some created by regulation. Yes, the intention of regulation is good, but it's been exploited.
Yes.
If you go to the airport now, you see so many regulatory officers there. What are they all doing there? They create bottlenecks that makes it difficult for people to do business.
Perfect. So, Dr. Catherine, over to you in 30 seconds. What is your insight on that? Using the blockchain to solve the answers of regulations that actually, I think, a little too much.
Yeah, so I think blockchain technology presents a unique leapfrog opportunity for African countries. When you look at the BSV blockchain in particular, the cost issue around it makes it particularly attractive for economies such as the ones that we come from, that, you know, people just, there's not enough money in the budget.
Yeah.
But with that, you can get a huge return on investment, whether you are a government that chooses to adopt this amazing technology, or you are an investor that chooses to get involved with using this technology to solve Africa's problems.
Perfect. Well, with that, I would like to thank you, and it was an amazing discussion, and you guys are in the front line, and everybody's watching, and it's time for Africa.
It's time for Africa.
Let's bring blockchain to Africa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the panel.
Thank you, panel. Dr. Catherine, before you leave, will you tell us what is the status of the rollout of VXPass in Africa, on the African continent?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, after quite a number of months and weeks, you know, hard
I remember.
work
I've talked to you all
trying
for a long time about this.
Yeah. So, look, you know, we changed tact a little bit when I started with the work of building the business on the African continent. We were really looking at business to government type of transactions, but that presented quite a lot of problems, as you would know, Jimmy. So we changed tact, and I spent the last few months really building what we call a spaceship that will take us to where we want to go. And these spaceships are represented by the partnerships that we have now built. So as of yesterday night, in fact, one of the partnership meetings that I had with a company in the IoT space in South Africa, we are going to be rolling out in South Africa within 2 weeks based on that partnership.
Which is the COVID vaccination tracking application using the BSV blockchain.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Catherine. We are using this conference to really emphasize the global blockchain convention. As you can see, representatives from regions and countries around the world. As you've also seen, we are recognizing and honoring some of the leading forces across the world who are advancing a global vision of blockchain for utility and real-world value, and of course, for good. We want to take this quick moment as we're about to actually move to our session about blockchain in the Middle East and South Asia to first recognize someone from here in the Middle East who is making a big contribution to the growth of blockchain technology. He's been wonderfully and politely in attendance, learning and watching everything here at our conference, and he is a visionary within the blockchain industry, working to transform 9,000 businesses, hopefully, in the Anjum Free Zone using the power of blockchain technology, and also is a big believer in educating the next generation of professional talent to become blockchain engineers. I talk about this all the time. There's going to be a new specialty one day of Bitcoin blockchain script engineers that does not exist today. We love people who also share in that vision. He is a leading force in trying to grow the adoption of this type of technology for business good here in the UAE. Please welcome to the stage a recipient of one of our Blockchain Visionary Awards, the Director General of the Anjam Free Zone, His Excellency Engineer Ali bin Tawai Al